Now let's speak of the consequences of stratification system. Now, in other words, what are the positive and most importantly, what are the negative consequences for people who live in these very unequal societies? The most obvious consequence, very negative consequence, is health. Economic inequalities are significantly related to physical and mental health. All right? In other words, people feel really distressed about living in extremely unequal societies. So mental illness, mental health as well as physical health, both are related to whether the individual is living in equal or unequal society. In most societies, people in the lower classes are more likely to suffer from poor physical and mental health than those who are in the higher socioeconomic groups. I think this is pretty much straightforward. The rates of disability among poor for the major chronic illnesses are nearly double of the non-poor. You see, the poor people report much more instances of mental health issues than the non-poor, you see. So this is why governments should try to eradicate income inequality, social inequality. They should work hard in order to ensure equality, equal access to healthcare, to the drugs. Okay, patients should be treated equally by the doctors. Okay, doctors shouldn't discriminate the patients based on their social class or whatever. Life expectancy. A survey of a number of studies on the relationship between social rank and life expectancy found that socioeconomic position has a significant effect upon the life expectancy. What is life expectancy? That's how many years you live, okay, before you die naturally, not because of some homicide, murder, or some disease. Okay, so the relationship here is between person living in equal or unequal society and his or her life expectancy. The higher death rates of people in lower classes may be a result of a variety of different factors. Since the economic resources of the middle and upper classes are greater, they may put their resources toward better environmental conditions, more extensive healthcare, and so on and so forth. The rich people, the middle class people, they would spend their money on things that would prolong their lives. They would live in better parts of the city with cleaner air. They could afford better healthcare. They could afford to travel abroad, which would eventually have a positive effect on their mental health, for instance, right? But the poor, the powerless people, they can't, okay? They're very limited in their resources and opportunities. The lower classes may have little money left for medical care after they provide for the necessities such as food, clothing, and shelter. Because of this, they tend to be sick much more often than the non-poor. They tend to have more psychological problems such as anxiety, some psychological problems in general than the non-poor. People from the lower classes may often occupy positions that are more dangerous to health and life. Okay, think of the occupations taken by the poor. They work as garbage collectors, as bus drivers, construction workers, coal miners, welders. I mean, all these occupations are quite risky in comparison to the occupations which are taken by the non-poor, such as advertising executives, university professors, right? There is no risk in working as a university professor, or working as a politician, working as a celebrity, for instance, right? What's the risk associated with starring in films or singing songs on a stage, right? So definitely you see the difference between the occupations and the kind of people who occupy these professions. Next consequence is the criminal justice. The impact of social class on life chances is apparent in the area of criminal justice. The poor are disadvantaged in their relationship to the criminal system in several ways. First, they are much more likely to be victims of violent crimes. Okay, the rich people are less often killed and murdered than the poor. Moreover, poor people are more likely to be suspected of crimes by the police. They cannot afford a private lawyer, right? And so you would have a state lawyer who would usually be far more inferior than the private lawyer, okay, who is expected to be much more professional, much more qualified. In court, poor people are likely to appear guilty because their dress, manners, speech differ from that of the judges, who are usually members of the middle or the upper classes. When they do get out of jail, their poverty and jail record prevents them of getting a good job, or perhaps any job at all. So you see, prison record would prevent these people from, from returning to a normal life. And that's why they would commit crimes in future again. Education. A variety of factors prevent the poor from obtaining the amount and the kind of education needed for vocational success. Vocational means professional success. The quality of public elementary and high schools education available to the poor is generally inferior to that available to the middle and the upper classes. The reason why rich people send their children to the private schools and private universities is because they believe that private schools, they provide better education, right? And the poor, the middle class, the lower class people, they can't afford to send their children to the private institutions, right? And because of that, there is a belief that children educated in the private schools show better academic performance. They show better skills, than the children who study in the public schools.